Jamestown, Virginia, March 22nd, 1622. In a 24-hour period, 350 people, men, women, and children, were dead. Entire communities are wiped out, and a quarter of the population gone. This horrific event was perpetrated not by white men against red men, but just the opposite, Indians against Europeans. How could this happen? What were the causes, and what were the results? It started 15 years ago, in 1607, with the arrival of a group of Englishmen and the establishment of a settlement they called Jamestown in a region called by the English Virginia. On May 14, 1607, 100 plus men established a settlement along a large river they called the James. The native inhabitants were not especially happy about these new arrivals, and the relationship between the two groups was never good. In the first 5 years of its existence, the colony barely survived, and a couple of times it was almost abandoned. The local inhabitants, the Powhatans, could have easily wiped out the English, but they did not. Why? The English, while a nuisance, did provide goods which improved the living standard of the Powhatans, such as steel knives and hatchets, iron pots and pans, cloth, and luxury items such as glass beads and mirrors. The Powhatans provided for the English food and furs. Last, the English had not settled on any productive land. Over the years, the colony grew from a small fort to several farms and communities along the James River. By 1622, there were over 1,200 settlers in the area, and the colony became a viable community. Relationships between the English and the Powhatans improved after the marriage of Pocahontas, daughter of Chief Powhatan, and John Rolfe in 1614. Relationships were so good that in 1619 a college was planned and chartered to educate both English and Powhatan boys. This good relationship did not last, however. In 1617, Pocahontas died, and Powhatan died the following year. After a couple years of tribal infighting, Powhatan was replaced as the principal chief by his younger brother, Opechancanough. Opechancanough is an interesting figure, and there are some interesting speculations about his history. I will cover that in another video if there is any interest. For now, Opechancanough is the chief and has an immense hatred for the English. He devised a clever plan to drive the English out of his land forever. Interaction between the Powhatan and the English was cordial. Powhatan warriors would visit farms, plantations, and communities frequently. The Indians would visit, eat, and trade. As one colonist stated, they, the Powhatans, came unarmed into our houses. In some places, sit down at breakfast. At some plantations and communities, Powhatans lived and worked. Opechancanoug's plan was simple and effective. On a specific day, Powhatan warriors would go into each community or farm as usual, and then kill everyone present. The Powhatans who lived in farms or plantations were informed of this plot and instructed to kill the English occupants on that specific day. The plot, however, unraveled. One Powhatan lad living with a Richard Pace informed Pace of the plot. Pace fortified his plantation and rode across the river to warn the people at Jamestown. Word was sent to other settlements along the James River, but for most, there was not enough time. Early in the morning of March 22nd, the Indians came into the settlements. Some even arrived the day before and spent the night at the settlement. In the morning, they knocked on the doors and asked to be let in. Many were unarmed, and they were familiar visitors. Some accepted a meal or a drink. Then they seized whatever implement was available, a knife, an iron pot or pan, even a gun, and killed everyone in the house. Warriors then went into the fields and killed the men working there. Houses were burned and livestock killed. The colonists at Jamestown were stunned by the massacre. Settlers immediately withdrew to the forts and to other easily defendable locations. In addition to the loss of life, the colonists also lost valuable crops and supplies necessary to survive the winter. Ironically, during the winter of 1622-23, the colonists were forced to trade the Indians for corn and supplies, and even with these provisions, many went hungry. The mortality rate during the winter of 1622 and 23 climbed due to malnutrition and disease. Over 400 settlers died. At this point, Opechancanough could have easily finished off the survivors. Those outside of Jamestown would have been easy enough to kill, as they had no defenses, and Jamestown could have been set on fire. The fleeing colonists could then be killed as they tried to escape. Instead, he did nothing but waited for a response. It was his hope that this response would be the swift departure from his lands, or acceptance of Powhatan superiority, or restrict settlement to just the Jamestown area, which is what a Native American tribe would have done. But he misjudged his opponents. The English did not have the manpower or the skill to successfully combat the guerrilla tactics of the Powhatan. The colonists resorted to trickery, diplomacy, and economic warfare. They called a peace conference and poisoned the wine served to the assembled chiefs, then attacked their bodyguards and attendants, killing over 200 of them. They made trade deals with Indians in the upper Chesapeake Bay area for corn. During harvest season, they would attack Powhatan and allied villages, killing as many warriors as possible, but mainly capturing their corn. This war continued on and off until 1632, when a treaty was signed between the English and the Powhatans. For several years afterwards, the area of the Chesapeake Bay was peaceful. Trade flourished between the English and the Indians. New immigrants arrived yearly, and farms, plantations, and communities soon spread all along the rivers. In 1644, Opechancanough again attempted to drive the English out, or at least restrict their expansion. What became known as the Third Anglo-Powhatan War was fought from 1644 to 1646. While the English losses were about the same in number as 1622, it represented no more than 10% of the population. Opechancanough was captured and killed while a prisoner. The war marked a severe decline in the Powhatan Power. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please hit the like button, and if you have not subscribed, I would appreciate it if you would. Thank you.